Today, I want to explore the psychology of why we keep letting people mistreat us, not to place blame on ourselves, but to uncover the beliefs, fears, and patterns that quietly shape our choices. Because once we understand what has been driving those choices, we can begin writing a different story, one built on self-respect instead of self-sacrifice. The hidden link between self-worth and the treatment we accept. The way we allow others to treat us is often connected to the beliefs we've formed about our own worth. We'll explore how those beliefs develop and why they quietly influence the standards we set in every relationship. One of the biggest misconceptions I see is the belief that people who tolerate mistreatment simply don't know any better. But human behavior is rarely that simple. Most of us recognize when something hurts. We know when a comment feels disrespectful, when a relationship leaves us emotionally exhausted, or when someone repeatedly crosses a boundary. The question isn't whether we notice it. The question is why we stay with it. What I've learned over the years is that our actions are deeply connected to the stories we carry about ourselves. Those stories don't usually arrive as clear, spoken thoughts. They show up in quieter ways. They sound like, maybe I'm asking for too much. I don't want to disappoint anyone. If I try a little harder, maybe things will get better. Over time, those thoughts begin shaping what feels normal, even when normal is hurting us. Research in psychology suggests that our sense of self-worth is formed through thousands of interactions over the course of our lives. The way we were comforted, corrected, encouraged, or ignored all contributes to the beliefs we develop about ourselves. If love or approval once felt conditional, we may unconsciously learn that acceptance has to be earned. And when that belief follows us into adulthood, we often work incredibly hard to deserve respect instead of recognizing that respect should never have to be earned in the first place. That's why two people can experience the exact same behavior and respond in completely different ways. One person hears criticism and calmly says, "That isn't acceptable." Another immediately wonders what they did wrong. The difference isn't intelligence or strength. More often, it's the invisible beliefs each person has about their own value. I think this is where we need to replace judgment with curiosity. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me for allowing this, we can ask, what belief am I protecting by staying? That question changes everything because it shifts the focus from blame to understanding. And understanding is where change begins. Here's the truth that can feel both uncomfortable and incredibly freeing. People don't just learn how to treat us by listening to our words. They learn by watching what we consistently accept. Every time we ignore our own discomfort to keep someone else comfortable, we're sending a message that our needs can wait. Not because we intend to, but because that's what our actions communicate. The beautiful thing is that self-worth isn't fixed. It isn't something we're either born with or forever without. It grows every time we choose honesty over people-pleasing. Every time we honor a boundary instead of apologizing for it, and every time we remind ourselves that our value doesn't rise and fall based on someone else's opinion. The standards we set for our relationships almost always rise when the way we see ourselves begins to change. And that naturally leads us to another powerful question. If our self-worth shapes what we accept, then what keeps us holding on even when we know we're being hurt? So often, the answer has less to do with the other person and far more to do with our fear of losing the connection altogether. Why the fear of rejection can keep us stuck. Our brains are wired for connection, and sometimes that need becomes so powerful that we choose familiar pain over the uncertainty of being alone. We'll look at why belonging can feel more important than protecting ourselves. One of the hardest truths I've had to learn is that human beings will tolerate an astonishing amount of discomfort when they believe the alternative is disconnection. We are not just social creatures. We are creatures who survive through connection. For thousands of years, being separated from the group could mean danger. And while our lives look very different today, our nervous systems haven't completely forgotten that old fear. So when someone mistreats us, the experience is often more complicated than simply deciding whether the behavior is acceptable. On one side is the pain of being disrespected. On the other side is the fear of losing the relationship. the friendship, the approval, the sense of belonging, or even the identity we've built around being needed. And for many people, that second fear feels bigger. I think this is why we sometimes hear ourselves saying things that surprise us. It's not that bad. They didn't mean it. I just don't want to make things worse. Those statements are rarely about logic. They're often attempts to reduce the anxiety that comes with imagining rejection. Research on attachment and belonging shows that social rejection activates many of the same neural pathways associated with physical pain. In other words, being excluded, ignored, or abandoned doesn't just hurt emotionally. Our brains can experience it as a real threat. When we understand that, we begin to see why setting a boundary can feel so terrifying, even when we know it's the healthy thing to do. And here's the part that breaks my heart a little. Many people learn early in life that keeping the peace is safer than telling the truth. Maybe expressing anger led to conflict. Maybe saying no led to guilt. Maybe love felt more available when they were agreeable, helpful, and easy to be around. Over time, the nervous system starts equating self-protection with risk. So when an adult relationship becomes unhealthy, the old pattern quietly returns. If I speak up, they might leave. If I ask for respect, I might lose the connection. And without realizing it, we begin negotiating away pieces of ourselves in exchange for the hope of staying chosen. But belonging built on self-abandonment is incredibly fragile. The more we hide our needs, silence our hurt, and tolerate what diminishes us, the more disconnected we become from ourselves. We may keep the relationship, but we start losing the person who exists inside it. The goal isn't to become someone who no longer cares about connection. Connection is a beautiful, necessary part of being human. The goal is to stop believing that connection requires the sacrifice of our dignity. Real belonging is not earned by becoming less of who we are. It's created when we have the courage to be fully ourselves and trust that the people who can truly meet us there are the ones worth keeping. And that raises another important question. Where did these patterns begin? Because the fear of rejection rarely appears out of nowhere. More often, it was shaped by experiences that taught us what we had to do in order to feel loved, safe, or accepted. How childhood and past relationships shape our boundaries. Many of the boundaries we struggle to set today were shaped long before we had the words to describe them. Understanding those early patterns helps us stop repeating them without realizing it. I think one of the most compassionate things we can do for ourselves is to become curious about where our patterns began instead of becoming critical that they exist. Because when we don't understand our history, we often mistake our survival strategies for our personality. We tell ourselves, I'm just too nice. I'm just a people pleaser. I've always had trouble saying no. But what if those aren't personality traits at all? What if they're adaptations? What if they were brilliant ways of staying connected, staying safe, or staying loved when we were younger? None of us enter the world knowing what healthy boundaries look like. We learn by watching. We learn from the people who raised us, the environments we grew up in, and the relationships that shaped our understanding of love, conflict, and acceptance. Long before we could explain our emotions, we were absorbing messages about what was expected of us. Maybe you grew up believing that keeping everyone happy was your responsibility. Maybe expressing disappointment was met with silence, anger, or guilt. Maybe love was abundant when you performed well, stayed agreeable, or never caused problems. Those experiences don't simply disappear because we become adults. They become the blueprint our nervous system uses to navigate future relationships. Psychologists often talk about internal working models, the deeply rooted expectations we develop about ourselves and other people through our earliest relationships. These models quietly answer questions we may never consciously ask. Am I worthy of love? Will people stay if I disappoint them? Is it safe to speak honestly? Can I trust someone without losing myself? What's remarkable is that these beliefs can continue guiding our behavior decades later, even when our circumstances have completely changed. That's why someone can look successful, capable, and confident on the outside while privately struggling to tell a friend, a partner, or a coworker, that hurt me. The difficulty isn't a lack of intelligence or maturity, it's that the nervous system remembers what the mind has forgotten. It remembers the cost of speaking up when speaking up once felt dangerous. And then life adds more layers: a betrayal, a controlling relationship, a friendship where your kindness was constantly taken for granted. Experiences like these reinforce old beliefs, making them feel even more true. Before long, you begin expecting disappointment. You stop asking for what you need because you've convinced yourself it won't matter anyway. But here's something I want you to hold on to. Understanding your past is not about assigning blame. It's not about spending years pointing fingers or replaying every painful memory. Understanding is about reclaiming choice, because patterns lose much of their power the moment we can see them clearly. I've discovered that healing often begins with a simple but courageous question. Is this reaction coming from who I am today, or from who I had to be to survive back then? That's not always an easy question to answer. Sometimes it asks us to sit with grief. Sometimes it asks us to acknowledge needs that went unmet. Sometimes it invites us to offer compassion to a younger version of ourselves who did the very best they could with what they had. The beautiful thing is that our brains remain capable of change throughout our lives. Neuroscience tells us that new experiences, healthier relationships, and repeated acts of courage can create new patterns. Every time we express a need with honesty, every time we say no without apologizing for existing, every time we choose self-respect over old habits, we're teaching our minds and our bodies something new. We're reminding ourselves that the past may explain our patterns, but it doesn't have to predict our future. And as those patterns begin to change, another challenge naturally appears. We start realizing that kindness alone isn't enough, because there is a profound difference between offering compassion to others and quietly abandoning ourselves in the process. That's where our journey takes us next. The difference between compassion and self-abandonment. Being kind doesn't require tolerating disrespect. We'll uncover why empathy without healthy boundaries often leads us to lose ourselves while trying to save someone else. I think this is one of the places where so many of us get confused, because compassion is a beautiful thing. It has the power to heal relationships, deepen trust, and remind people that they are not alone. But somewhere along the way, many of us started believing that being compassionate meant having endless tolerance. We confused understanding someone's pain with accepting behavior that causes pain. Those two things are not the same. I've met countless people who can explain exactly why someone hurt them. They know about the difficult childhood, the stressful job, the heartbreak, the anxiety, or the fears that shaped the other person's behavior. And let me be clear, understanding someone's story matters. It helps us respond with empathy instead of judgment. But empathy was never meant to become permission for repeated harm. One of the things I've learned is that empathy without boundaries doesn't strengthen relationships. It slowly erodes them, because when one person is always expected to understand, forgive, adjust, and carry the emotional weight, the relationship quietly becomes unbalanced. One person's needs continue to matter while the others slowly disappear. I think many of us have been praised for this imbalance without even realizing it. We were called the easy one, the dependable one, the peacemaker, the person who never asks for much. On the surface, those labels sound like compliments, but sometimes they're describing someone who has become so practiced at ignoring their own needs that other people barely notice they have any. That's the danger of self-abandonment. It rarely announces itself with dramatic moments. It happens in the small decisions we make every day. We laugh when something wasn't funny because we don't want to create tension. We say yes when everything inside us is asking for rest. We convince ourselves that our hurt can wait because someone else is struggling. And one decision by itself may not seem significant, but over time, those choices become a pattern. And that pattern quietly teaches us that everyone else's emotional well-being belongs at the top of the list while ours belongs at the bottom. Here's something I remind myself of often. Compassion is not measured by how much pain we're willing to endure. Real compassion includes us too. If our kindness extends to everyone except ourselves, then it isn't complete. We cannot build healthy relationships by consistently abandoning the person we're responsible for protecting. Research on healthy relationships consistently points to one truth. Trust grows where honesty and boundaries exist together, not where one person silently absorbs disappointment to avoid conflict. In fact, resentment often grows in the spaces where honesty has been replaced by self-sacrifice. We tell ourselves we're keeping the peace, but inside something begins to harden. We feel unseen, unheard, and eventually disconnected, not just from the other person, but from ourselves. I also think it's important to remember that boundaries are not punishments. They're not walls designed to keep people out. They're acts of clarity. They help define where one person's responsibility ends and another person's begins. When we communicate a boundary with respect, we're not saying, I don't care about you. We're saying, I care about both of us enough to build this relationship on honesty instead of silent resentment. And here's what often surprises people. The relationships that can withstand healthy boundaries usually become stronger because they're built on authenticity instead of performance. The relationships that fall apart because you finally ask for respect often reveal something that was already true. They depended on your silence more than your presence. That realization can be painful, but it can also be incredibly freeing. Because every time you stop abandoning yourself to preserve a relationship, you make room for relationships where you no longer have to earn love by disappearing. You begin to understand that kindness and courage were never meant to compete with each other. They were always meant to walk side by side. And once we stop confusing compassion with self-abandonment, we're finally ready for the most important step of all, not changing someone else's behavior, but changing the way we show up for ourselves, one courageous choice at a time. Reclaiming your self-respect by teaching people how to treat you. Healing doesn't begin when other people change. It begins when we believe we're worthy of respect. Communicate that through our actions and stop apologizing for protecting our peace. I think this is where so many people wait for the wrong miracle. We wait for someone to finally understand how much they've hurt us. We wait for the apology that will somehow make everything make sense. We wait for the difficult person to become emotionally aware, for the relationship to suddenly feel balanced, or for someone else to decide that our feelings matter. And while we're waiting, our lives remain on hold. The truth is, healing has never depended on someone else's willingness to change. It has always depended on our willingness to believe that we deserve something different. That belief doesn't arrive all at once. It grows quietly, often through choices that seem almost insignificant in the moment. It's choosing not to explain away behavior that repeatedly hurts you. It's saying, that doesn't work for me, without feeling the need to write a 10-page defense of your decision. It's recognizing that every boundary you honor is also a promise you're keeping to yourself. One of the most powerful shifts I've experienced is realizing that people don't learn how to treat us from the speeches we give them. They learn from the standards we consistently live by. We can spend hours telling someone that respect matters, but if we continue accepting disrespect without responding differently, our actions become the louder message. That isn't about blaming ourselves for someone else's behavior. We are never responsible for another person's choices, but we are responsible for deciding what we will continue participating in. There is a profound difference between causing someone's behavior and choosing our response to it. I know that setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels terrifying. If you've spent years believing that your value comes from being agreeable, accommodating, or endlessly available, then saying no can feel like you're becoming someone completely different. Your heart may race, your mind may fill with guilt. You may wonder if you're being selfish. But discomfort is not always a warning sign. Sometimes it's evidence that you're doing something your old patterns have never allowed you to do before. Growth often feels unfamiliar before it feels natural. Courage rarely arrives after fear disappears. More often, courage is the decision to act while fear is still sitting beside us. I've also learned that not everyone will celebrate the healthier version of you. Some people become uncomfortable when you stop accepting what you used to tolerate. They may call you difficult, distant, selfish, or changed. And in a way, they're right. You have changed. You're no longer measuring love by how much of yourself you're willing to give away. The people who truly care about you may need time to adjust. But healthy relationships have room for honest conversations. They have room for mutual respect, accountability, and repair. They don't require one person to disappear so the other can feel comfortable. And perhaps that's the greatest gift of reclaiming your self-respect. It's not just that you begin attracting healthier relationships. It's that you finally become someone you can trust. You stop abandoning your own instincts. You stop questioning every feeling that tells you something isn't right. Little by little, you rebuild the relationship that every other relationship rests upon, the one you have with yourself. I want to leave you with this thought. Your worth has never been determined by how much disappointment you can endure, how many chances you can give, or how quietly you can carry your pain. Your worth was never waiting for someone else to recognize it. It has always been there, asking only that you recognize it yourself. The people who belong in your life will not require you to become smaller to make them comfortable. And the moment you truly believe that, you stop chasing acceptance at the expense of your own dignity.